I feel like I should say as a kind of disclaimer, I'm not related to Kate Bush, so I'm not here with some kind of nepotism or anything like that. So yeah, we've got an interesting panel of artists and a curator. And first up is Ori Gersht. I hope you don't mind if we read his biography, because all of the biographies are quite long and impressive. I don't want to get anything wrong. So Ori is a visual artist based in London. His work's been exhibited internationally at venues including the National Gallery in London, the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and at the Beijing International Art Biennial. His most recent solo exhibitions include Slivers 2015 at Tel Aviv Museum of Contemporary Art, On Reflection at the CRG Gallery in New York and Ben Brown Gallery in Hong Kong, also 2015, Still Life at the Columbus Museum of Art in Ohio 2014, and a Mid-Career Survey 2012 at the Museum of Fine Art in Boston. Gersht is the recipient of several awards, including the Artist Grant, Beijing International Art Biennial in 2010, the Leo Constantine Award, Photography Award from the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. His work has been the subject of several monographs. So, Ori, if you'd like to take the stage.
I'm going to make a short presentation. The time is very limited, and I would like to show some expert from one complete and one expert from the film that I'm working on at the moment. So I try to be very concise with my work, which is often difficult. What interests me for quite some time is the relationship between photography and truth, but also the way in which new technologies are refining and defining the way artists attempting to represent the bareness of the world, to hold on to something that actually exists. And I'm very much interested in some sort of curves that maybe start with, in the Renaissance, with the definition of the monocular perspective, and now later on the invention of lenses and other optical devices, they slowly start to affect the way painters conceive and represent. So if you think about shadows in Italian Renaissance being very dark and black with the invention of lenses, the use of lenses, painters like Vermeer start to identify color within the shadow and the relationship between shadow and light, or intensity of color that also affecting the way we perceive space. So the mathematical perspective all of a sudden become limited or restricted, and so on and so forth. And I would like to start with a very famous painting. Is on the screen now. Goya painting, 3rd of May, 1808. This painting was created by Goya, one of the, I would say, the last true historical painting. Allegedly Goya was there when the event took place, when Napoleonic troops were executing people in the outskirts of Madrid. And this story is kind of, this painting is unraveling the entire narrative. So we see the before the event itself, and the after. We see the dead bodies on the floor with the blood. The soldiers are about to execute the crucified figure that is just a moment before the execution. We see the people with covering their face with dirt. And it's a very dramatic painting, very large in scale. It kind of epitomized the genre. And now I want to move to a painting that was created some years later in 1867, with a few versions of this painting by Manet, the Execution of Maximilian. That obviously in this painting Manet was influenced or referring clearly or quoting the Goya painting, but there is a fundamental difference between these two paintings. Manet painting is less dramatic, taking place in daylight. There is something very casual, almost trivial about the event. We see one soldier in the process of looking or checking his gun while the execution takes place. This event take place in Mexico. Manet actually was not there. He heard about the events through the press. There was a huge coverage in the French press. And Manet was actually looking at something that possibly is fundamentally different from what Goya was looking at. It seems that the emphasis in this painting is not on the unfolding narrative, although obviously it's there, but it's very much about a very particular moment, the moment that the bullet is leaving the barrel, and the smoke that is shooting out of the barrel. This moment of suspense where Maximilian is hovering between life and death. The moment that the bullet is just left the barrel, we can't register it, Maximilian is still alive, but already death is hovering. And I'm interested in these two paintings, and I would like to talk about the relationship between them because they happen at two critical moments. Photography was officially invented in 1939. So one painting was created in 1814, the other in 1860, one of the versions in 1867. And because of the invention of photography, I believe that the take of Manet was fundamentally different. Actually, Manet, unlike Goya, was not there at the moment of the event, so he was not a bear witness to what was going on. Manet saw some photograph. This is a photograph of the shirt of Maximilian that was published in the press. And Manet was, I believe, due to the invention of photography, was able to think about a moment that was maybe incomprehensible to Goya, a moment that didn't exist before photography was invented. Conceptually, the invention of photography already allowed for Manet to think about the passage of time, the bareness of the world, about moments that are collapsing within the folds of time that didn't exist before that fundamental moment. And I would like to move to another photograph, that very famous photograph by Roger Fenton. It was created in 1855 when Fenton went to the Crimean War, or was sent for to cover the Crimean War with particular agendas. He was instructed, or he was supposed to support some sort of a campaign that give a better image or reputation to what was going on over there. And Fenton took many photographs, most of them landscape, or most of the photographs lacking any action or movement. And one of the main reasons for that is that technically he was unable to capture movement. And he was working with wet collodion plates. It took him a long time to prepare each plate. He had to actually prepare the plates right a moment before he was shooting the photograph. And the sensitivity of the plate was such that the exposures were very, very long, and the moving figure will disappear and into the ether. It's interesting that these photographs were taken 10 years before the Manet photographs, painting. So they are more or less of the same period. But Fenton is still restricted by the actual technical limitation of the medium, where Manet can already contemplate, anticipate, or explore the conceptual promises of the medium. And it is those sort of inventions that are fusing the imagination and start to represent or allow us to conceive a world that we couldn't before in. So if thinking, for example, about the 17th century, I mean, and I'm talking about all these, maybe I should have said it before, that I kind of believe at the moment we are at the moment of a real revolution, the digital revolution. Things are changing very, very fast. New technological inventions are coming one after another, and I feel it as a practicing photographer since the moment I took on the medium when I was in university, and obviously everything was analog, and Photoshop 1 just arrived. And so many service providers that I work with over the time to close the businesses, constantly everything is changing and have to be redefined because of new invention. And I believe that the same thing happened in the middle of the 19th century was when photography was invented, and I also think that it's probably very relevant to the scientific revolution in the 17th century, where the microscope and the telescope were invented. And once again, people were able to conceive a world that existing far beyond our tangible limits. So I was just reading recently about Leeuwenhoek that was looking through the microscope in the 17th century, looking at a living organism or moving organism through a microscope, and you look at human sperm, and it was very difficult to see what was in front of his eye because he was expecting to see little people. And it takes time to to understand, to be able to conceptualize what we actually see, and with this understanding we start to perceive the world as something that is very different from how we were able to see it before that moment. So I would like now to move a little bit. I'm jumping, and I'm trying to be very concise because of the time restrictions. So I would like to jump now to another photograph that once again are related to the Goya and to the Manet, a very famous photograph by Robert Capa from 1936, in the death of a soldier during the Civil War in Spain. And obviously there are a lot of debate if this photograph was staged and fabricated or not, but I don't think that it's very relevant to this argument. What Capa managed to do when he was able to move with the fighting forces with a 35mm camera for more or less the first time, with a much more sensitive phone that allow him to shoot in different light conditions and to capture movement. He was able to point and shoot a soldier or a fighter at the moment of death, at the moment where the bullet was actually penetrating his body and the guy was falling to the ground, once again crucified. What Capa managed to capture is a person that is suspended between life and death. When Manet was depicting the bullet in the air on its way to its victim, Capa was able to capture the victim with the bullet inside the body. Somebody that's simultaneously alive and dead. There is a paradox here, photography, a paradox that only that we can never come to terms with in our mundane existence, but photography, with its ability to fold time upon itself, can depict a moment like this. Somebody that we see here in the photograph is existing in two stages, or two phases. He is alive and dead at the same time. And I would like to relate this photograph to a series of works that I produced in 2007 titled Time After Time, where I took photographs of flowers based on arrangements that were created in the 17th century by Dutch masters. This is one of the paintings that I referred to when I constructed my bouquet in Jan van Eysen. I didn't design my bouquet in relation to a particular painter. I tried to analyze the structure of the 17th century Dutch bouquet and work with an understanding of the compositional priorities and ambitions. So I will source the same sort of flower, work with the verticality of the composition and so forth. What interests me in my photograph is to depict moments that didn't exist for those people when they were making this painting. So on the one end, the compositions are very much related to the work of the old master, but what is depicted is something that only exists now because new technologies are allowing these moments to be created. And here we see a moment of explosion, and once again the camera is capturing something that revealing a paradox. We see the force of the explosive device pushing through the flowers, but everything is still holding intact and together. We see something that I would suggest relate to the Capa photograph, something that is falling apart, but yet this fragment of a moment still holding together. And I would like to move from this photograph to another body of works that followed, titled Blow Up, that was related to a series of painting by Henri Fontaine-Latour. This painting in particular is at in the collection of the National Gallery in London. What attracted me to Fontaine-Latour was the kind of the certain contradiction that existed within the work. They were beautifully executed. There was something very bourgeoisie and contained about those paintings, and yet the palette that Fontaine-Latour chose while he was creating those paintings were restricted to the tricolor of the French flag, so everything was working within the white, blue, red and blue. And I was very much interested in, throughout my work, it's always an issue. I mean, there is the technological aspect of the work, but I'm also interested in some sort of ideological discourses that are constantly infiltrated or hidden in the work, and giving the work some sort of historical and often political or another dimension, another sort of another dimension or undertone. When I looked at the Fontaine-Latour painting, and this was kind of, this whole series arrived after time. There was something very painterly about the Time After Time series, because the speed of the camera did not allow me to freeze everything and to create this, or to capture detail that are absolutely frozen in time. To capture them in such sharpness, to reveal information that the naked eye could never conceive. So what I've done for this series, I worked with a very high resolution camera with digital Hasselblad. It was important that the means of production would be digital. So if you think about painting, a medium that is very visceral, and every brushstroke leaving a physical mark on the canvas, I wanted to create a series of work here that would be as removed as possible from them. In analog photography, there is still the materiality of the celluloid that is covered with silver halide, and the image is created on a surface that is tangible, that has some sort of a physical presence. But when you move to the digital world, still optically the process is very similar to analog photography, but the image is being captured on a sensor. So in order for the image to materialize, some sort of a mathematical algorithm is required, and the image is almost emerging out of pure abstraction, which is the antithesis to the way a painting is created. And yet the outcome of these works is very related to painting, so it's come back to full circle and creating almost a suspension of disbelief. But what was important is that it's not just the means of production, but what these images will reveal will be some sort of an antithesis or work on the periphery or boundaries where the painting of Fontaine-Latour could not reach, because the technological devices did not exist there. And what we see here is an image that's happening at a phenomenal speed, at 7,500 of a second. A moment that doesn't exist for us at all. A moment that I can argue is in the realm of metaphysical time. And yet the camera captures this moment. And there is a question if this moment actually happened or not. We have no way to assess this unless we absolutely believe in the technologies that reveal this, revealed or created this moment. And it's also brings, for me, some question about the relationship between photography and truth. Is the camera recording or is the camera creating? Which we can argue on so many levels, but in this instance, without the camera, this moment doesn't exist, and there is no way to assess if it actually happened or not. When we look into the detail of these images, there is more and more information in them. I wanted to create photography, and these were blown up, like the image here, the print here, the exhibition. They were blown up to 8 foot by 6 foot in scale. I wanted to allow the viewer to come as close as possible to the image, and to see more and more information. The image constantly can open up and reveal more and more without moment of disappointment. I wanted to almost avoid the place where you reach the print at point blank and you can see a pixel, you can see the atomic particle that create the image. I wanted the image to constantly open up in front of our eye. And also to create an image that will be packed with so much information, which is actually another characteristics that are unique to the photographic medium. Its ability to retain so much information instantaneously, almost to retain infinite numbers of detail in such a fragment, in such an instant. I wanted to pack these images in such a way that as the viewer approaches them and look at them, there is no way to digest the image. That the saturation of information is such that there is no way that I can only look at one area or another and never be able to somehow encompass the entire image. Following this, I moved on last year to a new project work that I titled On Reflection. And this work started with 3 paintings by Jan Bruegel the Elder that are hanging at the consistorius in Vienna. And some various things interest me about this work, but one thing in particular was the relationship between those paintings that Bruegel created and truth or some sort of an historical evidence. Despite this naturalistic appearance, there is nothing natural or, I would say, real, always in inverted comma, about this painting. Bruegel depicted a bunch of flowers, and all these flowers, this is the beginning of botanic experimentation and exploration. So all of a sudden, Bruegel painting, all the white flower disappeared completely. And each one of the depicted flowers could not exist without human intervention. On top of that, all the flowers in the bouquets are coming from different parts of the year, from different seasons. They will never bloom at the same time. Bruegel was painting one flower at a time and created a composite of all these flowers that are all of a sudden appearing in one cohesive bouquet. And another thing about this bouquet is that this is at the beginning of imperialism, and flowers start to arrive to Holland from all parts of the world. Flowers that could not bloom beside each other, so we're getting flowers from Turkey and from Persia that existing. So everything about this bouquet is anything but naturalistic. But the painting itself created this sort of illusion. So I decided to work with this idea and recreate those 3 bouquets in the studio. So we worked and created them from synthetic material, which is even a step further removed from the natural world. And then, rather than looking at those bouquets directly through the lens of the camera, I placed them in front of mirrors. So the viewer gets the illusion of looking at something that actually physically existing in front of the lens, but it's only a reflection. I'll show you now the studio that was created for the making of this photograph. So the idea was that the flower will stand in front of the mirror, and then the mirror will explode rather than the flower itself, and almost the illusion will just fall apart in front of the eyes of the viewer. In order to do this, I had to create an entire room from mirrors, because as soon as the mirrors start to break, they start moving in some sort of chaotic order. So when we have one mirror looking at the flowers, when I view it through the camera, everything seems to be in order. The mathematical perspective seems to work. As soon as the mirror is shattered, what starts to happen is lots of pieces start to move in the space, and they start to reflect in a chaotic manner everything around. So the ceiling will be reflected, the floor will be reflected, and so forth. In order to avoid this, we have to create an hermetic space that all of it is constructed from mirrors. Another thing that I start to work with and realize is that when you look through a mirror, the camera is not focusing on the surface of the mirror. In order to see a reflection, the focusing point is very different. So what we actually see is a virtual image that doesn't exist anywhere. I'll give you an example. When I look at myself in the mirror, if I'm 50 centimeters away from the mirror, my reflection will be my focal point of my reflection will be 50 centimeters into the space of the mirror. The actual thing that's in front of me is the glass itself. This is the only material thing that I'm looking at. And what I was attempting to do here in this body of work is to actually try to create a representation of both spaces, of the material and of the virtual space. The problem is that when the camera captured one, it failed to capture the other. And in order to negotiate those two spaces, I put two cameras beside each other. One camera was focused, the camera was 3 meters away from the mirror. One camera was focusing on the surface of the mirror, while the second camera was focusing 6 meters into the space, into the virtual image. So here is one photograph created of the virtual space. The mirror completely disappeared because it's out of focus. But what tends to happen here is that all of a sudden we're not looking at one mirror, but we're looking at hundreds of mirrors shattering. So flowers start to move in the space, so we can see the same flower appearing a few times at the same instantaneously. Once again, there is a kind of a visual paradox, because we can only, in our mundane experience, we can only see one thing at one time, one thing in one place at one time. And here, we're seeing the same flowers popping up, and the composition start to shift all radically. So things that were low in the frame all of a sudden appear at the top of the frame because all the mirrors start to move around. This is a photograph of exactly the same bouquet. But here, the focus is not on the reflection in the mirror, but on the surface of the glass itself. So I'll give you an example of what's happening. So this is the original Bruegel painting. This is an image of the material space, of the mirror shattering. And this is the same bouquet, but looking onto the virtual space. One of the things that happen when we look at the material space is that because there is no depth of field whatsoever, I managed to attain sharpness that was so cute that every little detail, although these photographs on first account look like abstract images, there is nothing abstract about them at all. There is no abstraction in photography. A photograph cannot exist without something tangible that stands in front of the lens. Unlike paintings that from the first brushstroke there is a process of interpretation, the camera always relying on some sort of quotation, something need to be in front of the lens. And the only reason these images look abstract is because the reflection in the mirror starts to fall out of focus. But actually the surface of the mirror, and this is a detail of the photograph we've seen before, is becoming so sharp, actually sharper than anything I've ever shot, because there is no depth of field. I'm actually looking at a plane, at a flat plane, a mirror that has no depth at all. And one of the things that happened, which was quite peculiar, in order to make these photographs, we have to create mirrors from toughened glass. And because they don't exist in the market, we created them with Samel at the studio. So we took toughened glass and then we coated them with silver, similar to the silver that's called the celluloid in analog photography. And what happened, surprisingly, is at the moment of the explosion, the silver tends to contract. So all the shapes that you see on top of the pieces of the mirror are a consequence of this contraction of the silver at this enormous speed that in the naked eye could never depict. These moments, for me, were very much related to early photographs that I took of the olive trees, for example, where I was going to photograph in olive groves, in Palestinian villages, in trees that were very, very old, between 300 and 500 years old, with celluloid in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the day, at a time that it's very, very difficult to capture anything in this blazing condition in Israel. And my intention was to destroy the film with light. So to allow light to penetrate the lens, to register information on the film, but slowly erase it by more information and more information until everything falls apart. I wanted to destroy the film in light, not to capture, to somehow register violence through the act of photography rather than through the information that the camera is capturing. So the photographs themselves are becoming very ephemeral and delicate, but the process to create them is a process of violence and attempt to destroy. And in this photograph, I found some sort of similarity to the photograph of the toughened glass mirror. Once again, the surface of the film, like the surface of the mirror, being distressed here, and what reveals through this process is something else that is hidden. In this photograph, it was very much what I realized later on. We were very much negotiating the process of remembering and forgetting, recalling and erasing, where information is registered on film, and then, because they leave the aperture open for a long period of time, more information is registered on top. But the new information, by nature, is erasing the information that was underneath. So information is building upon information, and the final image becomes an accumulation of all these layers of information that registered upon each other. And these processes are almost the antithesis to the very fast photographs that I showed you earlier on, because here the exposure is very long, and the process is maybe closer to the process of painting. There is the time of the exposure is the time of the creation, the time that exists not in the actual moment or maybe a time that is anti-photographic. Rather than violating the passage of time, there is an image that is creating over time. What I would like to show you now is the film that was made in relation to the own reflection in series. So the body of work is comprised of a series of photographs and this film. what happened in this film, I used two cameras simultaneously. So one camera is focusing on the reflection in the mirror, which is the virtual space, and the other camera is focusing on the surface of the mirror, which is the material space. And in the film, I kind of move between the two. So as you see, some of the images of the material elements, the glass itself is constantly falling down. It has a weight, and the force of gravity is actually working on it. But the virtual images in the glass are working almost against gravity. So as a piece of mirror falls down, we see the images almost kind of resurrecting or ascending. And everything moves in the film in all directions. So there is kind of this whole question between the material presence of what we see, or the relationship to the there-ness or to reality, the relationship between the material and the virtual. For me, in this film, was the kind of what are the two elements that are somehow try to collide with each other in order to create a space that is neither here nor there. I'm not sure if I have the time to. Yes, shall I finish now? Okay. I wanted to show the new film, but if you want, I can just play a minute of it.
Yeah, please. Play it.
I'll play it right away. It would maybe be disorientated to play without saying a word, but you can do it. And later you can ask a question about it. Yeah. So, if you just show me this.